Hello. We're happy to be here. We are Flip Sellin from Coordination, the design office, and this is
Gerhard Anger of ART+COM.
We both have worked on a project which, in an interior design sense, connected people to complex data. And we want to give you a small insight of how we achieved this and which steps and ideas lie behind a structure that enable people to get closer to complex data. And the business case that we're showing is the Visitor Center in Frankfurt Airport. It's a 1,500 square meter large airside, landside mixed entity, which we want to take you through, if you like. Yes. So we are talking about complex data. Data can be numbers, data can be sheets, data can be anything, and to make people approach data or make them want to find data and understand data, it's quite a challenge. So we're talking about how we can tackle this challenge, introducing people to complex data. Here you see numbers, but you see reality as well on this first shot of the Frankfurt Airport city. And one thing that we want to do or wanted to do is to get people softly into the data, get them interested into the data by finding aesthetic solutions to showing complex processes, what's happening in the sky resolved from the ground. This is an outside view of the showroom that we designed, the brand space, sorry, and it might give you a first impression of the architecture, which we have designed within a 5-year process. So these are actual flight lines, and this is the complex entity of the Frankfurt Airport, one of the largest airports in Europe. These are real flight lines of airports, and which you can see that these are now simplified to be easier to understand, which is a preset to what we're going to be explaining to you. So the first thing that you are experiencing is a huge light installation with dancing lights, as you saw just now, through the entire space of the center. And they're actually based on real data of flights coming in and passing out of Frankfurt Airport. So this is almost a 1,000 feet long installation flying through the whole space. So we're opening up the senses, we're creating interest, and we are layering reality with options to actually go deeper into what's going on at the airport. Maybe you want to take over?
Right, thank you. So I'm always a fan of trying to get a definition of what we are talking about. This is, I think, a principle that was not exactly invented by Aristotle, but very much promoted by him. And so I took a look at Samuel Johnson's dictionary, one of the first dictionaries of the English language, what he has to say about complex or complexity. How does Johnson define complex? He says it's composite of many parts, not simple, including many particulars. And he quotes the famous philosopher John Locke, who says, ideas made up of several simple ones I call complex, such as beauty, gratitude, a man, the universe. So, how do we make people connect with the data that makes up the universe? Quite a challenge. So what I would like to do is to guide us through a small journey, the visitor journey, the actual visitor journey in the Visitor Center at Frankfurt Airport, and highlight 4 of the exhibits, which might be interesting to take a deeper look at. And see how we faced the challenges of connecting the data that is represented in those exhibits, and how we connect the people who are going to look at those exhibits, who are going to visit the visitor center, and interact with those exhibits.
So quickly maybe show you, if I may. This is the 1,500 square meter area that we actually designed. And you enter from the stairs that you saw in the small movie before, and you come into the space looking into a deep, long runway-like structure with an array of attractions that we placed in there, being metaphors for certain data.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. So, the first thing you see when you enter the visitor center are two exhibits. One on the left-hand side, the count-up wall, and in the middle, as you can see, a model of the Frankfurt Airport, the airport city model, as it is called.
Which is 55 square meters large, so it's quite a sizable model.
Indeed.
And very impressive when you approach it.
Yes, it's very interesting indeed, and you can spend quite a lot of time recognizing things and taking a deeper look at things. So, the count-up wall, I think, is a very good entry point if we go back to the definition I just read of many parts, including many particulars. This count-up wall tries to condense 1 year in numbers relevant to Frankfurt Airport to 18 hours. Counting up, of course, most of the numbers always go up, it's always more and more and more, and try to give a glimpse of how those numbers might be connected, without stressing the fact, but how those numbers might be connected, those types of data might be connected, correlated, or what might be the causality of them. So it tries really to make the complexity of something like a huge airport, which can rightly be compared to a city, more tangible, and it tries doing that by stressing several statistical facts, like very obvious ones, like how many passengers traveled through this airport within a year, how many pets and animals were handled, but also how many bars of chocolate were handed out, which is of course very interesting because they only hand out bars of chocolate if something goes wrong. Yes? So, and how could you correlate those facts with each other? What can you learn from those facts? So it's a glimpse on what you can learn from data. You can learn from the number of chocolate bars how many things went wrong. Very interesting. So, but there is no interaction, and it's not very hard to grasp what you see there. You can just look at it and say, okay, it's going up and up and up. You can try and start thinking about the correlations and also the causalities, but you don't have to. And there is no interaction, you are not forced to do anything.
So there is a layer, and you see the layer for what it is. There's like you have a number of employees is the number of employees. It's numbers which are very, very blank, but in a very aesthetic surrounding. But you can't look into what kind of people are working there, what type of chocolate bars were consumed, and things like this. So this is the actual thing. The complex data lie behind this layer. So we've got this first layer to show people what data are about, and then we offer different layers that people can, if they want to, go deeper into.
Indeed. And
so here you see the countings, and there you see the large model. And the model has got an option that you can't only see the physical one, but you can also take an iPad and dive deeper into the next information layer.
Indeed. So it's about 50 points of interest that you can highlight with the iPad and get an augmented reality version of the airport city model. Some of them are also within themselves augmented with a 360-degree view, which I think is quite interesting and again stresses this idea of layers upon layers upon layers. Because when you think about it, you are in the physical reality of the airport. You take a look at a model of the airport, you have an augmented reality application that highlights certain things on the model of the airport, and within that augmented reality application you get a 360-degree view of certain aspects of the airport, which you can't personally visit, because it's a highly restricted area, so it's not so easy to go there. The apron is completely restricted, the airfield, of course, is completely restricted for security reasons, but there you see those many layers upon layers that we are trying to grasp and show.
Yeah, for example, this workshop here, where you can see the tool, here you can dive in and you can actually be part of the workshop when you dive in with your augmented reality, and you dive into and you see what's going on in there.
But I think just one fact about the airport model that still stresses this, we don't force anybody to do anything, is everything is marked in print on the model itself. So if you don't want to use the augmented reality application and just take a look at the model and learn something about the structure of the airport, it's completely possible to do it without any technology.
So you always have an option, you're allowed to, or you basically, the idea is fostered that you might do, but you don't have to.
Indeed.
Now we come to another very exciting installation, which is a real-time installation, which are called the smart windows. There is 3 of them facing the apron. So you look at the airfield, and at the same time, you have got an augmented scenario, which is updated in real time. So as you can see here, this is the original picture of a person interacting with an interactive screen, which takes a live picture of the outside and gives you many comments, complex data.
Gives you data. In the upper part, you just see live information about the current weather. Why is that interesting? Interesting, of course, it's very interesting for an airport, because I don't think it's completely possible to see it on the presentation, but what's also shown is the instrument landing system category. So that's the category that's very important for certain types of handling, starts and landings on an airport, like visibility, is there fog, how is the weather. So the data you see here is intimately connected to the workings of the airport. That's the data that's also used by the airport to handle their operations. So there's a very, very direct connection between the stuff you see here on this live camera image of the apron and the intimate workings of the airport. And this goes on because what you see here on this slide is an actual aircraft, of course, but you don't know if you just take a look out of the window, you see an aircraft. Well, okay, there's an aircraft there, it's an airport, nothing very interesting going on. But there's more information that you can access via those smart windows. There are points of interest that you can access, and it tells you real-time data about the actual flight. How many passengers? Where did it come from? Where is it supposed to go? When did it arrive? How many pieces of luggage were handled on this aircraft, on this flight? And if the apron is empty at the moment and you don't have any aircraft there, you see a projection of the future. You can access the information which aircraft will be at this apron in the next 5-10 minutes or whenever it is supposed to arrive. And it's actual live data, again, the data that's used by the airport for the actual operations. So we have access to the exact same data that's used for the operations of the airport. It's called, for the nerds among you, it's called Info Plus, and there are several APIs that we can access and make accessible to people who are interested.
Yeah, and talking about nerds, if you want to bring complex data to people, I mentioned it before, but I'm going to stress it again, you don't want to push it to people. So here we have a scenario. Somebody, the person with the camera, sits there and observes the lady using those deeper data. So you don't approach directly, you can look at somebody else looking at it and getting basically a feel for what you might be doing. and you could be losing your shame, your uncomfort, to actually to then start interacting with it as well, if you want to. So from an interior design point of view, it's always important to give people a safe space. If you give them complex data, if you give them something that they are maybe not expecting or they're not sure that they want to know, give them some comfort, put them in a good place where they can see everything, where they can maybe lean and maybe observe others going deeper into, and then foster the interest for people to go for the next complexity layer of the data available.
Right. Now we come to the quasi-climax of the visitor center, and it's also the thing you see from afar when you enter the whole space. As you can see in the...
I'm just going to flip back a few.
Flip back.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So at the far end, you see this large blue screen popping up.
Indeed. At the far end, you see the globe. Yeah, that's thing that's at the end of the journey is Earth, the globe, and yeah, it's not in the center of the space, but it's something like the centerpiece. It was also the most complicated thing to develop, and one of the most complex things, I think, in the history of my company was ever developed by us. So very challenging thing to do. And what it basically does is it shows all the flights that are currently in the air in the whole world, worldwide. So some statistics, I mean, it's a little bit hard to say at the moment how many flights it's going to be tomorrow or how many it was yesterday. We all know that there are many issues at the moment, geopolitical issues, but also issues with workforce and also issues with the pandemic, which is still not over. So, but you can say that there's about 100,000 commercial flights each day and about 200,000 flights each day overall. So 100,000 commercial, 100,000 the rest. Military flights, drones, hot air balloons, private flights and stuff like that. So about 100,000 and double the amount, and you have the total amount of flights each day.
So this is an incredibly complex set of data which needs to be digested and then forwarded to the visitors, to the people.
Indeed. And we actually had to face several strange occurrences in the data, which, I think stresses what complexity made up of many different things is about and what you have to deal with when you are trying to develop such a thing. Trains. Nobody would think of trains in this context, but there are trains in the data set. Because if you're supposed to go to Berlin and you are diverted to Leipzig and you have to take a train to go from Leipzig to Berlin.
It's marked as a flight.
It's marked as a flight. But it behaves completely differently. It's very slow, of course. It has a very low altitude, hopefully. So it's a strange thing, and it behaves strangely, and it looks strange. What do you do with it? During the pandemic, there were very few flights overall. And we had to develop this thing during the pandemic, in the first year of the pandemic. But you have to test it with some data. So we tried to work with what we could use. And what you could see is very strange flights going on around Colombia in South America. Very small aircraft, very near the shores, very short flights. No idea what they what
traffic that was.
what they actually were carrying, but very interesting things you normally don't see, because if there are 100,000 flights going on and everything is quite crowded, you don't see those small things like trains or like the supposed drug traffickers. And one other thing that came up that stresses something that's also very important is the aspect of curation. You can't just show the data as it is. It is too overwhelming and it might cause issues. Why am I saying that in this context? The issue, one of the issues is hot air balloons. Hot air balloons are in the data center. They are kind of aircraft, they are airborne vessels. But they behave quite strangely. They're very slow, they have erratic movements, so it's very strange.
And if somebody sees it who does not know what he's seeing or she is seeing, they might be highly irritated. Is it a UFO? Is it something falling to the earth?
Indeed.
And so it's like complex data is always, as Gerhard was saying in the beginning, reduce complexity. So taking out these complexity in a curational step allows people to actually easily understand what's going on. And I really would like to show you, I'm fidgeting already, what's going on. So this is the globe as it might be seen when you approach the space, and you can see those white little lines, and they're actually the flights live. And then we developed an interface which works absolutely beautiful with gesture control, with a radar system. And there you can actually see what this complex data, how it is digestible. You can zoom in and go deeper into what is my area of interest. Where do I want to look at? Do I want to look at Frankfurt? Do I want to look at Colombia? And you can zoom incredibly deep into the structure and communicate about it with your peers.
And I have to say, using it is quite an experience. This type of interaction might be an overwhelming experience for some because it's quite unusual. So
to make people feel good about it, you need to think about the interface as well. Indeed. How do they approach data? And how can they dive into the complexity? So next to the gesture control, there is a thing which is called
a space mouse.
A space mouse, which is an alternative. So everybody who wants to approach and play with this large volume of information can use the space mouse, which is much easier to handle and maybe not as close to this large image and might not be as intimidating, the effect. But you can also see how deep you can look into this. So we're zooming onto Frankfurt Airport here, and the level of detail goes to, okay, I can see the swimming pool of my neighbor.
Indeed. And this makes it also more important to curate the content, because if I'm living in the Frankfurt area and I zoom into that and I see a hot air balloon, but I don't know what it is, and see a very erratic flight, very strange movement directly above my house, this will make me nervous. So you have to make decisions about that, how to deal with the data and how to curate it. Right.
So how do we get complex data to people? How do we connect them? I think it's not overwhelming people. It's giving them a choice, giving them safety of space, and being entertaining and aesthetic, so that they feel stimulated, not overstimulated, and that they feel comfortable. And then the will to dive deep into complex data might be higher than before.
Indeed.
So this is, as an ending scene, the visitor center at night with completely changed colors, but I think you see very nicely the flight lines, the real-time flight lines, which are touching and leaving the airport model. And you can also see the smart windows, they're tinted dark. It's the real life that you can see there with augmented, complex information.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.